And welcome everyone, thank you very much for tuning in to our pre-match show of Liverpool versus Leeds United, finally back in the promised lands and joined by my absolute legend of a mate, Tom. Thank you very much for coming on, mate.
No problem.
I'll be asking Tom his thoughts on the Premier League campaign as well, his expectations, the new potential signings, who Leeds have brought in, and really how Leeds United will combat against Liverpool in the first game of the Premier League season. But if you're new around here and you want to keep up to date on all things Liverpool related, make sure you do hit that subscribe button, put your bell notification on as well. But just make sure you do get involved in the comment section below. If you are a Leeds fan or a Liverpool fan anyway, let us know your thoughts and expectations for this coming Premier League season. I'm excited. I'm pretty sure Tom is, mate. But as first off, thank you very much for coming on, mate. Really do appreciate taking your time out. Being made up to get you on since the last game of the season, last kick of the season for Leeds. First off, how happy are you and the Leeds fans to be back in the Promised Lands?
Well, I think, as you could probably tell from seeing all of the celebrations for the end of the season, I think Leeds as a whole is sort of very glad to be back. It's been 16 long, cold years away, I think, so it'd be nice to be back and hopefully show some people some half decent football at least. We'll see.
For me, I was made up. Leeds have come through, mate. To see Leeds back in one of the traditional big Premier League clubs anyway. The amount of fans that you get at your home ground anyway, it's ridiculous. Considering obviously you were back in like League One and everything, weren't you? A couple of years ago.
League One for at least 4 or 5 years, I think. So it's not been fun. It's been very stressful.
Yeah, the changing tide really has been Bielsa, really, hasn't it? He's a fantastic, world-class coach and manager, really. He's very well respected by Jurgen Klopp, Pep Guardiola, and the top managers in the Premier League and in world football. What has impressed you off the back of last season, mate? What watchers really need to do better from last season, really, to stay in the Premier League? We've seen the likes of Fulham come in, spend big, get relegated the season after, and a couple of teams, Norwich as well. They come to the Premier League last season wanting to play this nice attacking style of football, really, and sadly they got relegated. It was nice, refreshing to see from a relegation side, a promoted team anyway, but they got relegated. Do you think Leeds might need to adapt their game?
I mean, I think slightly, but based off the way that we play, I don't think too much. It's like, I think on the whole, we're very sort of like a lot of our game is based around sort of trying to press high and then counter teams, which in the Championship we didn't really need to use that much. Like we pressed teams high, obviously, but we must have had 60-70% of possession in most games last year, so we didn't really. So I think if anything, I think the Premier League might suit the way we play a little bit more. I think teams sort of trying to come at us a bit more, and we can like we've always been a relatively solid, sort of out the back, and then we've got pace and some decent midfielders to get us up that pitch quite quick. And yeah, I'm hoping the Premier League will suit us quite well, and just don't need to make too many major changes from last year. I don't think.
Yeah, for non-Leeds fans, obviously Liverpool fans anyway, watching the video and really how, as you mentioned, you play like an attacking high line of football. Really, how do you think if you were Liverpool, you would approach Leeds in terms of an attacking team getting at Leeds? Where do you feel, not to spill the beans, but I'm pretty sure Jaeger's not watching this video, but how would you get at Leeds and what would be your weak points if there was a couple of
But
points?
again, I think the way that you play should probably suit quite well to us because you play a similar-ish style of football, especially with your striker dropping in quite deep. It's like obviously for me it's a slightly different class, but I think they plays a bit like a slightly similar role to the way that we tend to use our strikers. They tend to sort of drop in quite deep and let especially the wingers and our attacking midfielders almost play off him. So, but I think for you, I think it's just a case of trying to play the way that you play. That you've got enough ability in your front three and your front and like with your midfielders as well that the chances will come. It's just going to be a case of taking them, I think.
Yeah, the main man, the Leeds man, and I think he's your favourite player, and I'm pretty sure he's a lot of Leeds' favourite player. You know him, that I say, the absolute goat. Tom hasn't shut up since I've known him. Calvin Phillips probably got posters in the background of him. Yeah, But yeah, Calvin Phillips, mate, he's just been called up for the England national team, and he for the friendlies or qualifiers, whatever they are. But he's a hugely impressive player, and I think I've had to look at Leeds over the previous season, and Tom's been raving about him. Just give Liverpool fans a a view of what Calvin Phillips is best at doing, and really how his style of game is.
Like, he will sit in front of the back four and sort of marshal the midfield in front of him, really. But he's just so calm and collected on the ball as well, which I think the fact that 3 years ago he was an attacking midfielder playing behind the striker, it wasn't until Bielsa came in that he became a CDM, really. So he's dropped back a lot deeper, and I think Bielsa just saw how well he reads the game, really. I think he sits there and just seems to run the midfield. Obviously, in the Championship, he'd be sitting there by himself with players in front, and he would run the show. But I think the fact that he's so good on the ball, I think a lot of that comes from the fact that he's played further up the pitch most of his career until Bielsa came in. So.
Yeah, would you say that would be as I mentioned, would he be Liverpool's Leeds' danger man, and really something that Jurgen would probably look to identify and really stop the supply line to Calvin, really to really stop dictating, slow down the speed in which Leeds is attacking players?
Slightly, yeah. Not necessarily, because he is more of a defensive-minded player now, with the way that he plays, and he is relatively disciplined at sitting back. So I think for an attacking point of view for us, he's obviously he doesn't tend to score too many goals, but he gets quite a few assists. But I think the main thing for him is more just to try and stop him from breaking down the play. I think that's going to be the big thing, is him trying to break up play and get the ball forward quickly. He's not going to try and play all these big through balls through and behind your back line. He's more just going to try and get the ball further up the pitch as quickly as possible for the rest of them to do their job.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him in the Prem, mate, and I think a lot of Leeds fans are, and he's still quite young anyway, considering his age, and I'm interested to see him in that England setup and really how he plays. But any other danger men for Leeds, really, who impressed you off the campaign of last season? Who do you reckon in that Leeds squad will really flourish, really, in the Premier League?
I think there's the players that obviously I think most people have heard of, the likes of Pablo Hernandez. That's obviously been an incredible player for a number of years. I think he is getting on a little bit now, so he might be more of an impact substitution. I think more next season, sort of being able to come on with 20 minutes to go against tired legs. And I think I've been really impressed with Matthias Klich, the Polish centre mid. I think he's almost bridged that gap in between Phillips and Hernandez. He sort of played that slightly in between role, and I think he's one of our most creative players that will just run and run all day. He works so hard for you, and I think again he's probably the player that I think you'd need to look at trying to mainly nullify, to sort of try and stop most of our attacking threats. I think a lot of our play will come from like Phillips playing into Klich's feet, and Klich then being able to turn, and he's the one that's going to find those passes through, and he's going to create most of our goals, I feel.
Yeah, Bamford as well. Patrick Bamford, obviously, after I've got to mention Rodrigo. He's been a hugely impressive purchase from Leeds, mate, from Liverpool point of view. I think Barcelona, the likes of Real Madrid as well, was sniffing in around Valencia anyway for him. Do you think he'll be a fantastic purchase from Bielsa?
I certainly hope so. I think he's going to suit the style of play I think we play. I think the fact that some of the biggest Spanish teams will sort of look around the 75, 80 million euro mark recently as last summer, and they got turned down. I think the fact that we've gone and got him for, I think, just under 30 million, I think is an unbelievable buy, to be honest. I think it'll take a bit of time to settle in. I think any player is going to take a few weeks at least to settle in under somebody like Marcelo Bielsa. He just has a completely different style to anybody else, really, especially within training. He always likes to try and blood players in. So I wouldn't be too surprised if the likes of Rodrigo don't start against you. But I wouldn't be too surprised if Bamford still starts, just because he knows the system. And I think Bielsa's always been very loyal to his performers over the last few years. And as much as you and all of the rest of the guys have always slagged off Bamford for his finishing abilities, I think he is a very important player for us. And yet his finishing certainly needs to improve. And I'm hoping that will come if he does get some game time in the Premier League. But I think the way that our play works around him, I'm hoping Rodrigo can come in and play an identical role, but hopefully a little bit more of the high quality finishing that I think we're lacking at the moment.
What formations does Bielsa really like to tinker with? What's his most pronounced really from last season?
Well, to be fair, we've played the same formation probably 90% of last season. We occasionally went to a three at the back when we were missing a couple of midfield players, but we normally go like a 4-1-4-1. So we'll obviously the back four, then Phillips will sit in front. Then we've normally played, last year we had Click and Hernandez would play them behind the striker with two wide players either side. But I think that's how we're going to set up for the majority of the year. I think, especially with, as I said before, we're obviously having Phillips and then Hernandez and Click in front. I think we might have to slightly change that this year against some of the bigger sides. I think someone like Matty's Click will probably have to drop a little bit deeper, help Phillips out a little bit more than he's had to in the past. But now that's the way we tend to sort of, it's just like a two blocks of four with a couple of players fitted in between.
Yeah, I can definitely see that working, mate, because back in previous seasons, Leicester very good in the 4-4-2, 4-4-1-1, and then obviously the likes of Fergie when he was in charge of Manchester United, classic 4-4-2. So very similar-ish formations, but I can definitely see that. And Bielsa's not a manager to let his players slack and really he'll get on the back of them, and he expects, similar to like the likes of Sheffield United, he wants his players to work, not just the defensive players, but the whole midfield and the attacking players to come back. Really, from a point of view of a Leeds fan, mate, what are your expectations for next season?
Try not to expect too much early doors. I think what Sheffield United have done last year was an outstanding year for them to do so well in their first year up. I think for us, it's just going to be a case of just trying to set the platform. And if we can get anywhere near the top half this year, I think we've had a very good year. But I think I'd sort of aim for maybe the top 12-ish would be a good first season for us. I think, especially with quite a few new signings coming in, and we've signed I think 5 or 6 really young players that we've added into the under 23s. I think we've signed 8 or 9 players this window so far, and only 2 of them are probably first team players. The rest are all to be fitted into the 23. So I think for us, it's just a case of if we can cement ourselves in the Premier League in the next probably 2 years, all of these younger players are going to come and work through. And we've got a very young squad.
Yeah.
Like even with our first team, to be honest, I'm just hoping we can set ourselves up to allow these younger players to come in and hopefully impress further down the line.
Yeah, absolutely spot on there, that. So final bit of the talking points. Score prediction. I had to ask you. Scored us anyway. What do you reckon?
It's obviously as tough a start as you could hope for, I suppose. But I don't know. I think again with the scorecard, and as bad as it sounds, I'm not really too concerned about what the scoreline comes up. We're not expected to get anything from it. I think as long as we put in a good performance to set us up for the year, these aren't the games that are going to determine our season. Like there's 5 bigger games for us coming down the line. Obviously, it's so good to have first game against the champions to sort of see where we really are at. But yeah, these aren't the games that our season is going to get judged on. So as long as we come out with a decent performance and our players look well, that's all we can really hope for. I think if we can grab a goal, maybe a 3-1 Liverpool, maybe. Like I think we've got a chance to do something, but I think first game is a case of not trying to expect too much, really.
Absolute legend. Good answer, La. Let us know your thoughts. It'd be a big test. I think champions against champions. I think for Liverpool as well. It's going to be a fantastic opportunity, really. A difficult test. If there's any managers out there, it's Bielsa. I think Klopp's spoken for years about him. He's very highly rated, and there's one manager that probably could get over Klopp anyway and really break the records. Liverpool's home record is absolutely ridiculous. We've not been beaten. Touchwood anyway, for absolute years at Anfield anyway. But Tom, thank you very much, mate, for coming on. Absolute legend, probably the most level-headed fan out of all of us. Really, you and Ryan, very sensible.
Not difficult, is it?
Right, skulls. But yeah, thank you for coming on, mate. All the Leeds fans, best of luck, Tom, and every single one of you in the Premier League. I'm very excited to see how Leeds do adapt to the Premier League and just made up to fingers crossed, and a massive thank you to all the key workers and NHS staff anyway out there day to day combating against COVID-19 anyway. Keep safe, Reds, and all the Leeds fans anyway, every single one of you. As always, Tom, speak to you later, mate, and we'll definitely get you on for the a post-match video if you're free then. But see you later, Reds. See you later. You never walk alone.